It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. Welcome back, everybody. Delighted to have you. We have a lot to go over today, so we're going to have a good time. I have a segment on water, and specifically the water quality, or perhaps the lack thereof, in our new house in Florida, outside of Orlando. We're trying to figure out what is causing pretty bad smell in the water. So our adventure will continue. I think next up is lab tests, and I probably talk about that in the segment. So we'll just leave that for later. Of course, we have an interview with Apostate Ashley. She has a YouTube channel where she talks about her journey. Yeah, her journey out of religion, even though she was like really deep into it, but found her way out. So congratulations, Ashley. We're going to hear about her and talk to her a little later on. I also have another segment about ESGs. I've talked about ESG funds in particular is what I'm talking about here previously. And years ago, they had different names. They were called socially responsible funds, socially aware, socially conscious funds, all kinds of different things. The short answer for the whole thing, it's a marketing gimmick. That's my opinion. That's why you're listening to my show, to get my opinion. I hope that's why you're listening. Or maybe you find it wickedly entertaining. So we have a segment on that. And of course, before I even get into any of that stuff, my adventure continues. I had said the other day to somebody that owning two houses thing has stopped being fun for a while anyway, because our air conditioner in the Florida house died. And we learned this very late one evening going into the nighttime, so you can't really call somebody to come take a look at it. Checked all the breakers, checked everything we could, and then just because, it's really lucky, I guess, really nice that the house has a second air conditioner. The second air conditioner is to cool the upstairs, but the stairway from the main floor to the second floor is wide open. So naturally the cold air just falls into the first floor, which normally is kind of annoying. And we only run the air conditioner up there a little bit just to make sure it doesn't get too hot for anything that's up there. And it's actual bonus room and bathroom and closet and everything up there. So it could be a giant bedroom, but turned that temperature down and had a fan to blow the air, help it down the stairs onto the main floor. So it wasn't so bad overnight. And the company, HVAC company, came in the morning and fixed it. Yay. The problem was a blocked drainage tube for the catch pan, drip catch pan. I don't know. The drip pan, because all the material from outside, from the actual air conditioner unit, the unit outside, sends in the cold water, the cold Freon, the cold whatever it uses now. Sorry, I'm an idiot. I don't know exactly how this unit works, but it comes inside, it blows air across it with the blower motor or the fan inside the house, and often the air in the house in Florida in September is very humid. So it creates a lot of water that drips down into this pan, falls into a little PVC pipe that goes into the floor, and then where does it go? Now, I'm used to the Midwest where we have basements. Well, most people have basements, and something like that would just fall down into the drain in the bottom of the floor of your house, and that somehow goes into the storm drain or the sewer, and it goes bye-bye, and you don't worry about it. I mean, your biggest fear is that if there's flooding, that water comes up that drain if all of the connections aren't sealed outside of your house, under your house, to the street, to the storm drain, all the way down. But here, this pipe goes into the concrete and then goes sideways for about 20 plus feet and comes out of the house a little bit underground, a little bit under the mulch, and then goes straight up 8 inches, and then it has a curve on it, hook, for the water to then drip out. Well, if you've ever dealt with this kind of situation, that tells you, or might tell you immediately, that the water has to be 8 inches deep to get over the bend outside, which means the entire 20-foot run of the pipe and even 8 or so inches inside of the house is going to have water continuously, every day, every month, all year. And apparently things get in there, which can be dead insects, or probably more likely a little bit of debris or small animals, insects, or you just get mold and allergy that grows, mold algae that grows and ends up blocking the drain. So the very nice people at the HVAC company, of course, sucked out everything they could from the outside and then went inside and tried to force water and air through it and got it all cleared out. But of course, this is something that I'll have to keep an eye on. But it's one of those things. I asked them, how long does it take to completely clog like this? And they said it could be a year, it could be 5 years. And I go, oh, house is 5 years old. I don't know if the previous owners ever cleaned out this line or even knew that you had to clean this line. So we've had some fun with the water, which you'll hear about later, the drain pipes for the air conditioners, and of course, the electric outlet in the garage. I think I may have mentioned that before, where there was a 50 amp outlet in the garage that had apparently 30 amp wires and a 30 amp breaker in the panel. That may not bug you as much as it bugs me, but I was like, there's no freaking way that's staying. So we had the electrician for that. So I'm learning all kinds of new stuff about how houses in Florida are different than houses in Illinois and the rest of the Midwest. So we're going to take a quick break and get on with the rest of the show.
Do you mind spending 30 seconds on dark matter just for the heck of it? So when we observe galaxies, we find that they're spinning around at such a rate that stars on the edge should be flung outwards, sort of like water droplets on a bicycle wheel that's spinning fast, the water gets flung out. Yeah. But the stars aren't getting flung out. Something must be holding them in. We don't see anything that can do that, but we know gravity has the power to hold things together. So we imagine that maybe there's some matter out there that we don't see, dark matter. That's why we don't see it. It doesn't give off light. And that matter is exerting a gravitational pull, holding those stars together in these spinning galaxies. And when we make that hypothesis, it explains observation so spectacularly well that we begin to gain confidence that maybe the stuff that we haven't yet seen and we haven't yet touched or smelled yet, maybe it's real. So we build big detectors and we try to capture one of these dark matter particles. We haven't succeeded yet, but I think that we will. So this is a beautiful example of how observations drive rational thinking to explain the facts and ultimately verify it through observation and experiment that can be replicated. That is what science is.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. Another Investing Skeptically segment on ESG. Very popular, very trendy, and according to me, secondo me, this is just a marketing gimmick. So disagree all you want, but this is my perspective on this. We've talked about this in painful detail, why I think it's a marketing gimmick. And, you know, okay, before I even get into this specific topic for today, you can find other segments, but really, really profoundly, briefly, One, every mutual fund that follows ESG rules has different rules and guidelines for what they do. So if it's important to you, you have to really get into the weeds to find out what they're trying to do. Two, every ESG fund that I've looked at in detail has some kind of, escape hatch, exception clause where they can basically do whatever they want to if they think there's a way for them to make money and help you have a better return. They can ignore the rules. Three, whether you buy or not buy a stock, or whether your mutual fund that you use buys or not buys a stock, doesn't affect the company at all. Those stocks are bought or not bought from other people that own the shares of the stock. If you could make the argument, and there might be some merit, that on the fringes you could affect the stock price, and maybe there's merit to that as a practical exercise, what can happen is that someone who doesn't give a shit about your ESG rules and guidelines and what you want will see that the stock is now undervalued, and they will go buy it. And when the price goes up, they will make the money and you won't. And of course, all of this is related to funds that are managed poorly, high expense ratios, and dramatic and significant underperformance. So all around, it's just a shit show. You're not doing anything effective or of value. If you really want to make a difference in the world, scrape off 1 or 2% from your portfolio every year instead of donating it to a company that's tricked you by using the word ESG or the letters ESG, and go give it to a local charity. You can control where your money goes. You can see the actual benefit. But whatever. That's my perspective on it. Well, the new thing is that the SEC has proposed rules around ESG. And the rules are meant to make it clear what people do and don't do and what ESG means. And of course, like a lot of other things, it's just chaos, and the regulators are having huge problems trying to define what ESG means because it doesn't really mean a specific thing. It's just this concept, this idea. And of course, I found a nice article from financialadvisoriq.com. In the, I think this is something that's created by TD Ameritrade. The title of this is ESG Could Get Messy Under Proposed SEC Rules, industry. I don't know why it says industry, but whatever. Because this is a proposed rule, there is a window of time where people can comment on it. It's available to the public to review, to comment on it, and a lot of industry people will go and make formal comments and opinions. And of course, there's every opinion under the sun in this article, picks a few of the interesting ones and quotes them. But of course, there are people that say it's too specific. Some people say that it's too vague. So I want to read you a couple of the ones that they selected to include in this article. And of course, now I'm going to pick from the subset of the ones that they picked. And I'm just going to read them and then maybe have a little follow-up on the end of my thoughts of what all these thoughts are. And I guess I should tell you what they're proposing. So according to the article, the SEC proposal would require firms to provide clients a detailed description of their consideration of ESG factors within key investment strategies or any method of analysis employed. In addition, any fund with ESG in its name would become subject to the so-called names rule, which would mean that at least 80% of fund assets would have to adhere to ESG policies. If that didn't make everything clear to you, I don't know what will. It's a joke, sarcasm. That doesn't make anything clear. No one thinks that's clear. And so what are ESG factors? Everyone has a different opinion of what is ESG. The names rule, which is already, to my understanding, not enforced in any way. And so the idea of an aggressive stock fund versus a moderately aggressive stock fund, again, those titles are marketing. When you buy stocks, there aren't aggressive stocks and there aren't moderately aggressive stocks. So how can you have the bulk of what you're doing, 80%, be aggressive stocks or income stocks? I guess if you have income stocks, you could have 80% of your stocks have higher than average income. But I don't know that companies really follow that, and I don't know that there's any enforcement of that. And again, must adhere to ESG policies, their own ESG policies. So they name the rules that they want to follow and call it ESG anyway, and then follow it 80% of the time, whatever that means. So very, very fuzzy. One comment, apparently from a group of states attorneys general, quote, investors need this transparent, consistent, and easily comparable information, and they need it now. I don't know that they do. I just kind of wish ESG would go away. And it's really interesting because I know my audience skews quite liberal, and this feels like a slap in the face, but it's just like conservative funds or anti-woke funds, funds that have these kinds of weird theoretical agendas. It's a marketing gimmick. If it worked, maybe we could have a different discussion. It doesn't work. You underperform, and I don't like any managed funds, generally speaking. There's always exceptions to it, but I use index funds, and the purpose for me for investing is to create a maximum return with a moderate to controlled kind of sort of volatility and really low expenses, really low taxes, getting the most money in the long run. For me, that's the purpose of investing. So my purpose for investing is not manipulating companies and trying to only invest in companies that I philosophically agree or disagree with. That's not my agenda. I have had people tell me that that should be my agenda. Whatever. It's your opinion. It's not my agenda. My agenda is to make a reasonably good amount of money at a reasonably moderate amount of volatility, aka risk. When you get a whole bunch of money, or if you want to skim some of the money off the top and make the planet a better place, that's pretty fucking cool. I applaud you on that and recommend that. The way to do that is not with an ESG fund, in my opinion, of course. Another comment here from Morgan Stanley, quote, there are a number of ESG-related terms and synonyms in use today, and it's difficult to ascribe meaning to many of them, end quote. I agree with that. There's a bunch of terms. It's hard to assign meaning. I'm delighted that someone from within the industry at Morgan Stanley realizes that it's just words. They don't have really clear definitions. And so for the SEC to try to regulate that, and the part that I worry about, and this is from my own personal perspective, this is Phil complaining that advisors might at some point be obligated to have yet another disclosure form that says, here is my approach to ESG. Maybe it could be as easy as me including a statement within the documents that I already have to disclose that I think that ESG is a marketing gimmick and I ignore it, but it may not be. So it's one of those things where it makes the industry more complicated, and I don't know that it's helpful to anybody. Here's another perspective. We also find the annual reporting disclosures to be onerous and not helpful in achieving the rule's primary goal of providing investors with more transparency on investment process. Okay, so you have that. I don't know if I want to read other things here. I'll scroll through this, but other people were concerned that if they disclose, if they make clear the exact thing, the transparency that this person wanted, they're selling they're revealing their secret sauce. They're revealing their secrets of what they actually do or don't do, what rules they actually follow in picking ESG stocks to put into their ESG fund. And by doing that, they're giving up proprietary information, and someone else could then copy what they're doing. And they're worried about that because they want to keep that special so that they can charge you some money. So it's just a confused and muddled mess, I think. One thing it does point out here, and I want to address this because it gets mentioned all the time about the growth of the ESG segment. Now, this is a tricky word, growth. It doesn't mean that the ESG segment has made money or lost money or made a specific amount of money. What they're talking about here is the amount of money that's flowing into ESG funds. As an example, the total assets, again, according to this article, went from 234 billion to 358 billion in 2021. And so far this year, even with the down market, the total assets, the total amount of money in these types of funds is up $9 billion. And all that tells you is that there's more ESG funds. There's more people recommending ESG funds. There's more people putting money into ESG funds. It doesn't mean that they're good or they're bad. It means that they're trendy. If more people buy blue clothes, it doesn't make blue clothes any better. It just means that's the trend. More people are buying them. So don't get caught up in that. But if you have further questions on my thoughts of ESG and how worthless it is, you can send me emails, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And then maybe there's something I'm missing. Who knows? I did find a nice thing here that as I was scrolling through, there was a comment about extra rules aren't needed. You could just simply follow the, oh my God, I lost it. But the idea is there's already rules about misleading advertising. So if your marketing or advertising is promising things that it really can't deliver, you don't need new rules specific to ESG. You could use rules that are already in place. So anyway, just some random additional thoughts on ESG, a marketing gimmick that you should ignore. Stick to index funds. If you want to do good things, go volunteer. Take off 1 or 2% of your portfolio every year, because when you're investing in ESG funds, either through high expense ratios or underperformance as compared to index funds, you're probably losing that much or more and probably having no positive effect like you're hoping to. So if you want to be helpful with your money, take some of it and give it away. That will work. That's it. I'm going to wrap this up. We'll go on with the rest of the show.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Welcome back, everybody. I am so excited. Today, our very special guest is Apostate Ashley. Ashley, can I call you Ashley? Do I have to call you Apostate?
You can call me Ashley.
Okay. Ashley is running a YouTube channel, and it looks like TikTok and some other places. Welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. It does sound like you're juggling quite a few things with your life, and I'm not going to name what those are. If you wish to do so,
Yeah.
you can. But a busy world, but yet you're finding some time to make some fun content. Tell us about where you can be found and what kind of pieces, I guess, what kind of art you're making.
Well, mainly I am on YouTube. My TikTok is just kind of for fun, like a little bit of ranty fun. And my YouTube is mostly for getting out a lot of my, atheist content, all the feelings that I have been thinking about in the last 7.5 years or so, or 9 years. I should say, completely, because I have been out of the ministry for 9 years and kind of was in survival mode for a while there, and got back on social media about 2 years ago. And then I decided, you know what, I think this would be super therapeutic for me to get out there and just start sharing my thoughts and my experience in religion and in the ministry as a former Pentecostal pastor. And through that, I have also gotten involved with the Clergy Project. So I've taken on doing interviews with other members from the Clergy Project, and that's originally why I started the YouTube. So I kind of have a mix of a few things in there, but mainly is I wanted to get my story out there and other people's stories that were also in the ministry and why they got into the ministry, why they left, because some of our stories are slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we totally spoil the ministry thing, I'm just going to tease the listeners. We'll come back to that. But
Okay.
YouTube, TikTok, I don't really know TikTok, but I've seen some of the stuff. I guess you can load TikTok videos onto your YouTube channel because I think that's where I saw them. I am fascinated. I did watch the video about your story and several of the other videos. And of course, listeners, go listen to Apostate Ashley. You did say that you kind of sort of grew up religious, but not really into it. Give us a refresher on, from childhood up till high school. What was going on in your life?
Well, so there was a Pentecostal Assemblies of God church down the road in the town that I grew up in, and my mom had got invited when I was about 5 years old. So we went to that church from about 5 years old to 8 years old, and there was a church split. We left the church, tried finding more. Nothing really felt the same for my mom, I should say. And then when I was about 12, I got invited by some kids on the bus to go to the youth group at that same church.
Oh, it's the damn kids on the bus thing. I hate that.
Yeah, I know. Well, and one of the kids, his dad was the bus driver, and he also went to the church too.
Yeah.
So I got invited, and I went because they were older boys. I thought they were cooler at the time, Yeah. And so I went along with them. They picked me up, and it became kind of a weekly thing. But I got really sucked in, even on that first time going to youth group, because, it was a Pentecostal service in an Assemblies of God church. So there was an altar call. It was the worship, with the setting and the atmosphere was, the ambiance was set for, the lighting was dark. You had cool, colorful lights everywhere, fog. The music was perfect to get out the emotions that I had inside of me. And so there was an altar call. It was just a classic Assemblies of God service. And I was hooked. After that, I started going every week. And then as the years went on throughout high school, and then I, got my license and everything, I would try to find every sort of church service I could. I would go 5 nights a week sometimes.
Wow. Now, I want to pause for just a moment. Your license, you mean your driver's license?
Yeah, my driver's license.
Sure. And what part of the country did you grow up, if that's available to be disclosed?
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio.
Okay.
So pretty close to Michigan, the Michigan-Ohio line.
Okay. So part of the Bible Belt, because everything
Midwest.
is kind of, it's wacky. And what was it about the service that made you want more? Are we talking about some kind of magical, mystical dopamine experience where you feel so welcomed, and the music and the lights and all that just kicked in and made you feel all warm and fuzzy? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much always the dopamine. But it was very much that type of service. I mean, if you've ever heard of the term priming in a church service or, worship and prayer service, where priming means that maybe unintentionally, but setting up the atmosphere, the music, the lighting, everything, so the people on stage get the emotion and reaction out of the crowd that they're going for. So whether that be more excited and charismatic, where you're jumping around, dancing, putting your arms up, worshiping God, and then moving into the somber, more emotional, slow music that will pull out some of those emotions. And for me, I was a very I'm very sensitive, emotional, not emotional, but
yeah.
I'm very I'm in tune with my emotions. And I also have always struggled quite a bit with mental illness, like anxiety and depression. And in a way, those services were therapeutic for me, kind of like a coping mechanism.
Yeah, I totally get it. It's one of those things that I'm probably on the other end of this psychological, mental, emotional spectrum thing where whenever I'm somewhere and I get the least hint that they're trying to excite me and rev me up emotionally, I want to run the fuck away. So That's kind of worked out pretty well sometimes, but sometimes I miss out. When people are like, okay, everybody sing along. Why? Why should I sing along? What's in it for you? What do you want me to do? So I have this inherent pushback anytime anything like that happens, and maybe to my disadvantage sometimes. But you did this. You went through high school. You did more and more apparently, 5 times a week. You said so. You were being hardcore.
Hardcore.
And at some point, I'm assuming, I think it was in the story, you finished high school and then you went to some kind of training cult stuff. What was that all about?
Yes, I joined a group called Master's Commission. It's a discipleship training group for college-age students. Basically, like, you memorize Bible verses, you go through Bible college, you take Bible college courses through the church, and we also did a lot of traveling, like missionary work around the country. And it's basically like an alternative to college, and was not a smart choice on my part to go through with that, because I never went and got actual education.
Yeah.
So I had went from high school to the Master's Commission and started taking Bible college courses. And that was, up until then, it had always been this very charismatic type of just experience in the church. And I didn't really have much biblical knowledge at all. And so when I went into Master's Commission and I just started the Bible courses, it was kind of the beginning of me learning about the Bible and the things I ended up finding out later that bothered me about it. So it was probably about, 5 years into that I, when I actually started to notice some of the flaws and things that I found wrong in the story altogether. But I had gone into Master's Commission, and it was very intense. I call it kind of like a Christian boot camp. There were a lot of rules and strict consequences for breaking any rules.
Yeah. And it sounds like they're trying to build warriors for Jesus and their specific church, of course.
Yes,
and,
definitely.
And so I guess the ideal, this is not just something you do and then go on with your life. This is the purpose of this, maybe to become more involved in the ministry and help the church grow. Is that kind of implied in this, or is that just what you did?
Basically, it's weird kind of looking back on some of this in hindsight, because it wasn't something that I realized at the time, but I was involved in a denomination called Open Bible, which is similar to Assemblies of God. And so the denomination I ended up getting involved in was just a smaller version of that. But I didn't realize that pretty much like within a lot of denominations, a lot of these denominations will have their own schooling. Like I went through, the one I went through was called Institute of Theology by Extension. And it's very similar to actually what Assemblies of God has, called Berean Bible College. And they do that through their denomination. So now on this side of things, I'm realizing that there are a lot of the other people in the Clergy Project. That was kind of how they also got their license to become a pastor, that these denominations will have these Bible college courses available, very easily available at a very low cost too. And, I didn't have any college debt or anything walking away from it. And so you go through these courses, and they're pretty much homed out of the church. You have a facilitator that is qualified to teach, but you can basically do these classes on the road, out of your home church, or anything. And so my denomination that I was a part of, much like a lot of other denominations, had this readily available for anyone, college age, whether even adults were taking the classes, in the evenings after work, things like that. But then this Master's Commission was specifically available for 18 to 25-year-olds. And it basically meant to swoop you up into your calling to be a missionary in the denomination. And so some people moved on to just be like a youth pastor or a senior pastor, but some moved on to actually be missionaries for Open Bible.
Now, I don't know if I recall this correctly. You didn't just do this once. You did it a second time? Is that?
Well, I was a student, and then I stayed. Normally, you commit to 9 months, so like 1 year. And I decided to keep going back. So I went back for a second year, which, second year, I guess you get training in leadership.
So I see. So it was a little something different.
A little something different. Your rules aren't as strict. Like, you can actually date with some rules and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't the first year. And then after that, you kind of go on to be an intern. So I was an intern, and then I married the assistant director. Eventually, him and I became directors of the program. So
the school thing that you went to, you married the director, the assistant director?
Yeah.
And that was the assistant director of what? One of these master commission things?
The master's commission, yeah.
Okay.
I was one of his students, basically.
Yeah.
And
see, that's one of those things that weirds me out on its own, but that's a whole nother that's a whole nother thing. So so you got married and you're running this quasi school to help more people become more religious. I'm just curious because I've had some experiences not quite like this, but do you ever feel any guilt that you help people join a cult or a really weird religion?
Oh my gosh, I have gotten a hold of so many people from back in the day.
Yeah.
Even though I know that they may not be in the place that I'm at, or maybe they don't feel like they were hurt or misled or anything, I have gone to so many people just apologizing for my misinformation. Like, I was wrong, and oh my gosh, I actually have this one horrible memory that I have apologized to this girl I don't know how many times, but it's one of the more detrimental things to some religious rituals, I guess, when it starts to get a little too extreme. So I was all in with the, speaking in tongues and getting slain in the spirit, all that kind of stuff that's involved in these Pentecostal churches. And I also fully believed in demon possessions at the time. This is so embarrassing, and I feel so guilty for it, but at the same time, I'm really glad that things turned out good. But one of the girls that was in the program with me, she had epilepsy.
Oh, now I know where this is going. Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
And I thought she was seizing.
Yeah.
Or no, I didn't know she was seizing. I thought she was a demon was possessing her. And so we prayed over her for about 3 or 4 hours. And that poor girl was having seizures on and off that whole time. And I should have taken her to the hospital.
Yeah.
And that wasn't something that I even realized until years later, which is the scary part, because in these circles, these behaviors are so normal. It's discouraged to go to the doctor. Everything is it's like a demon under every rock. Everything should be, everything is expected to be answered or helped by prayer.
Yeah, it's a spiritual world that you live in, and it's a spiritual problem that can be solved by faith and religion. And I think it's one of the fascinating things that often people think that the people involved in this, like you were, are bad people. But the people that are involved in it, there's exceptions to everything, of course, but the most of them were probably like you, where this is the world you knew or thought you knew. This is the life that you live. And within that framework, you were trying your best to help people.
Yeah.
And
that really was my heart, too.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. It's one of those things that I often recommend that atheists sometimes tone it down, although I'm all for being an asshole when appropriate. But for some people, for a lot of people, if you come in at them too hard, you're just proving the point that atheists are mean. So you're married, you're running this organization. You started to have doubts. Walk us through that starting doubt to having just kind of giving up religion. And I already know, spoiler for the listeners, you ended up getting divorced. Give us that whole story.
Yeah. So I actually officially left Iowa, which is where I was pastoring at the time, in September of 2013. So like coming up on 9 years.
Yeah.
This next month. Or actually, wait, no, we're in September now. So this month. It's been 9 years. And so I had started questioning about a year before that. So somewhere in 2012. And it was around the time of the elections, Obama and Romney.
Yeah.
And I remember my mind turning with all of this stuff going on and not agreeing with a lot of the stuff that the other church staff was talking about. Our senior pastor was telling us basically we all needed to vote the same. We all needed to vote for Romney. And I was like, wait a minute, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with Obama? So I just out of rebellion, I voted for Obama just because he told me I couldn't. Yeah. And I'm glad I did. And so around that time, it was like, I mean, similar to this last election, there are human rights things that come up and, things with LGBTQ and racism, all of those important topics come up around those times. And I started to see that what I was a part of actually oppresses a lot of those people. And it wasn't something I had ever really seen before or realized, and I started to not feel comfortable with that. And then, thankfully, because of the internet and Facebook and all those sorts of things, I had access to finally seeing things that were an opposing view to mine. So I came across posts about hell. Somebody that I knew that had left Open Bible had become a Universalist Unitarian.
Yeah.
And he dismissed the whole doctrine of hell. And then started sharing with me what he had found about it, looking into the original words of hell and what they actually meant, and that I didn't actually need to fear a literal hell, even according to the Bible. That opened my eyes wide open. And after that, I started looking more and more. I had bought those Lee Strobel books, like Case for Christ and stuff like that.
I'm so sorry.
I know. But then I started looking further beyond that, and I was like, I'm going to look into maybe some debates so I can hear both sides. So I started listening to theist and atheist debates. And then I started coming across Seth Andrews' podcast, The Thinking Atheist. And that was the first atheist content I had really come across. Then I had come across Bart Ehrman and basically realizing that there wasn't sufficient evidence for Jesus, like let alone the entire Christian century. And my mind was blown, and I couldn't unsee it. And it just kept unraveling, and it's still unraveling. And so during that time, I didn't officially take on like the label of atheist or anything. I just knew that I didn't believe, at least to the point of dedicating my life to it. So my husband at the time found out. I hadn't really disclosed this information to anybody yet, but he had seen some text messages in my phone about it. So we had a conversation about it. He wasn't really interested in seeing any of the resources I had come across. And I guess, long story short, we could no longer stay married. He wanted to stay a pastor. He's still a pastor. He's still out there in the same exact church and doing the same exact thing 9 years later. And I couldn't do it anymore. I wish him well. I hope that he sees the light someday and everything. But
Sure.
it was just hard to be in a romantic relationship when there was such a disconnect then. It was, I mean, for him and for me, it was a turnoff for him too. You know, I mean, the fact that I didn't believe, because, you know, for a lot of people who haven't been around a lot of atheists, a lot of Christians will feel maybe kind of scared by that and assume that it has to do with the devil or.
Well, given your upbringing, if he had a similar upbringing, which we know at point from your story, some of it he did, he might attribute your lack of faith to demonic possession.
Well, that's exactly what it was. And that was the reaction I really started to get from a lot of people, and that I really still get, is a lot of people think that I'm demon possessed. They think that I'm evil or a Satan worshiper, not really quite understanding that I don't believe in that guy either.
Yeah, I hear you.
But so it's been a little bit of a process, but to be honest, things did kind of work out well. He's remarried. I'm remarried. I really like his wife. I actually knew her from back then, and I feel good with her around my daughter and everything. And given the situation, what it is, we kind of have our struggles, obviously, with our opposing point of views, but we're really, with so much time having gone by, very cordial and co-parent pretty well.
Good. I am delighted to hear that. And of course, you left, you got remarried, and now you've found your voice again, and you're
Yes.
preaching a different thing, I guess. I don't know. And of course, that's the TikTok and the YouTube. What else about your story do you think we should know?
Well, there is more to it in regards to, you know, my daughter and parenting and safety, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to necessarily go into any sort of major details or anything, but we did experience a pretty traumatic situation through all of it because of, I suppose, like the control and the view and perspective that the people from that church and my ex-husband had on me at first, because I was an atheist and walked away. They were concerned that I wasn't a good mom and had actually taken her from me for a couple months. And I had to go search for her and get her back. And
Wow.
through all of that, it had come out that she was sexually abused by somebody at the church. And like all churches do,
They covered up.
covered it up, shoved it under the rug and kind of took care of it themselves. And that, given all of that, it really feels like a miracle that I am, co-parenting so well with my ex-husband, that, we were able to work through some of that. But it was so traumatic, especially with the fact that I felt like I could see the situation clearly being on the outside, and that he could not, because of, and he is a good person. It's just that cloud of indoctrination that blinds you to certain things that is, I feel, is very important for people to really think about things twice. Try to think of things in a more rational, like with critical thinking, because there are so many things in religion that are normalized and are, brushed under the rug or dismissed because it's in the name of God. And those are the big things that I feel very strongly about, because I feel like religion, even on small scales with, telling small children or people in general that they are inherently sinful and are going to go to hell. I just think that some of these things are very detrimental and should not be normalized.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to bring light to, oh my gosh, this is what religion actually does.
Absolutely. And if anyone is listening to this and needs a little support, of course they can call Recovering from Religion, but can people contact you to talk to if they feel that might help them?
Yeah.
And
my gosh, especially if there's anyone out there that has gone through a similar experience with any of the stuff. I mean, I've been through the ringer. I can help give you some advice for sure.
And is there an email address or a website they can go to find you?
Yeah. So I have apostateashley@gmail.com. So I do have that. I do have, that one might be hard to spell out, but I will. So I have, it's actually my full name though, almost, but so it's A as in Apple, P as in Paul, F as in Frank, LIEGER @clergyproject.org.
Okay, so that
I had
makes
to remember that for a second. So that's another email. That's my clergy project stuff if you want to get a hold of me for any clergy project stuff. And then my personal email is that apostateashley@gmail.com. I also have my Facebook, and then TikTok and Instagram too.
And YouTube.
So I'm pretty much everywhere. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of me.
Fair enough. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I do expect and hope that it's touched some hearts and minds, and that maybe you can be that person that helps someone else out. So thank you for coming here, and thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
And they told me the story all about this guy named Lehi who lived in Jerusalem in 600 BC. Now, apparently, in Jerusalem in 600 BC, everyone was completely bad and evil, every single one of them, man, woman, child, infant, fetus. And God came to Lehi and said to him, "Put your family on a boat and I will lead you out of here." And God did lead them. He led them to America. I said, America? From Jerusalem to America by boat in 600 BC? And they said, yes. Then they told me how Lehi and his descendants reproduced, and over the course of 600 years, there were two great races of them, the Nephites and the Lamanites. And the Nephites were totally, totally good, each and every one of them, and the Lamanites were totally bad and evil, every single one of them, just bad to the bone. Then, after Jesus died on the cross for our sins, on his way up to heaven, he stopped by America and visited the Nephites. And he told them that if they all remained totally, totally good, each and every one of them, they would win the war against the evil Lamanites. But apparently somebody blew it, because the Lamanites were able to kill all the Nephites, all but one guy, this guy named Mormon, who managed to survive by hiding in the woods. And he made sure this whole story was written down in reformed Egyptian hieroglyphics chiseled onto gold plates, which he then buried near Palmyra, New York. Well, I was just on the edge of my seat. I said, "What happened to the Lamanites?" And they said, "Well, they became our Native Americans here in the U.S." And I said, "So you believe the Native Americans are descended from a people who were totally evil?" And they said, "Yes." Then they told me how this guy named Joseph Smith found those buried gold plates right in his backyard. And he also found this magic stone back there that he put into his hat and then buried his face into. And this allowed him to translate the gold plates from the Reformed Egyptian into English. Well, at this point, I just wanted to give these two boys some advice about their pitch. I wanted to say, Okay, don't start with this story. I mean, even the Scientologists know to start with a personality test before they start telling people all about Xenu, the evil intergalactic overlord.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. I want to talk about water for a moment here. Not the whole we're going to run out of water in the southwest United States is going to be in crisis anytime soon. No, I've covered that already. I'm talking about my water. My water, particularly in Florida. For those who haven't listened lately, we bought a house in Orlando, Florida, and we're moving there. A couple of reasons, of course. There's some family in the area. It's I'm not going to walk outside in February and be at risk of death. Although August, it kind of felt like I might be at risk of death going outside because it is hot and humid. But it's also nice that, like I said, we have some relatives in the area, and the state income tax is 0 compared to Illinois, which is 5. So by moving to Florida, the state of Illinois almost effectively, essentially pays for my house in Florida. It's kind of funky. But again, we've covered that. Water. Okay, focus, Phil. Focus. Water. After we bought the house, we noticed there's a bit of a odor in the water. So now the big question is, what is the odor in the water? And is it actually a problem? So we've been kind of investigating, working some of the more basic things to try to figure it out. One of them was I went and talked to a couple of the neighbors, and a couple of the neighbors said they have absolutely no smell in the water. Okay, cool. One of them I did find out has a water softener, which can remove some things from the water, and that's cool. The other neighbor, I don't know. But then I talked to a neighbor that had put in this fancy schmancy, all-encompassing, mega $5,000 water filtration system for the entire house. So I don't think it affects pool water, and I know it doesn't affect the water that you put on the lawn, but everything in the house. And I was like, well, before I drop that kind of crazy money, I want to try simple things. So we flushed out the water heater, and we actually had a couple of other small things for a plumber to look at. So we had the plumber flush out the water heater, and he was telling us that water heaters in our area often last 15 to 20 years, which is good to know. No big deal. But anyone who's lived in a place that has truly, genuinely hard water will know that's like magic. We've lived in places where 5 to 7 years is all your water heater is going to get because it just gets coated on the inside with minerals and calcium and other things because the water is really hard. It's bad on the plumbing. It's bad on the pipes. I don't know that it's unhealthy in any way, even with, generally speaking, high hardness. But this house does not have high hardness as far as I'm concerned compared to other places. There's not giant deposits of calcium on the glass door for the shower or in the faucets or other places where we've seen calcium before. Part of it maybe is just the house is only 5 years old. But we didn't think it was hard water was the problem. But we flushed the hot water heater, and it smell didn't go away. So now we're thinking about other things, and maybe a filtration system would be good. So based on our neighbor's recommendation, we called a company and had them send somebody out to talk to us about water. And this guy walks in with a little suitcase, a little briefcase kind of thing, and goes into the kitchen and opens up this suitcase and starts pulling out little vials of chemicals and little eyedroppers and stuff. And I was afraid where it was going to go, and which is exactly where it went. And as soon as he started pulling this stuff out of the suitcase, I was like, well, this is not what I wanted. This is not going to work. We can't buy from this guy. And he does pretty much exactly what I figured he'd do. He takes out a couple of bottles, puts in some tap water, puts some water from the fridge, and then puts some water that passed through this little handheld filter / water softener thing that he has, and then puts in a couple eyedropper fulls. Oh, I don't know if I have let's see, what is that chemical? I don't know the first chemical he added, but then he added potassium hydroxide. If I have it wrong, not really that important, but I did look it up and how it tests, and what it does is it reacts to calcium. And so what it does is it makes the water look all cloudy. So the water that he ran through the little handheld thing, whatever it does, I think it's kind of a mini water softener, it removes the calcium, and or probably more importantly, it replaces the calcium with sodium chloride, salt. So your water becomes a little salty. That's how water softeners generally work. And voila, the magic. All this stuff is taken out of your water. So he shows you how cloudy and clumpy your water is. And it's cloudy and clumpy because the chemicals he put in bind to the solids in the water, mostly calcium, maybe some magnesium. And it becomes very visible and it shows in the water. And voila. But the question is, of course, do I want to get rid of all that stuff? As an example, he would say things like, you don't want any magnesium or calcium in your water. I was like, well, some people eat cheese and drink milk and fruits and vegetables on purpose to get more magnesium and calcium. Why would I want to remove it from my drinking water? So I thought that was weird. Let's see, another thing he did. Oh, it was, maybe I have these tests mixed up. It doesn't exactly matter other than the horse and pony show that he did. He did another test where, again, took different water samples. Oh, he was measuring the hardness. So the first one was dissolvable solids, I think. Dissolvable solids? I don't know. But the next one was to test hardness. And if the water has calcium, which made the first test go, clearly the hardness of the water is going to show up on the scale. So he put some water in a little bottle and added one chemical that made it all turn pinkish red, which was pretty cool. And then added another one, and after so many drops, it went from red to blue. And I did look this up, and it's a known test. I don't know if he was doing it right. I don't know what ratio of drops versus water he was putting in. But clearly we have hard water, which is a different way to measure the amount of calcium that was in the water from the solids test of the water. So that didn't do anything for me. And then he measured chlorine and did it really quick. And it was one of those things. He had a little plastic measuring device and he put some water in there, and then he put a few drops in there and it turned a different color. And he says, oh, your chlorine level is X. And I don't remember the number he said. And that's more chlorine than they recommend that you put in your pool. I'm like, what? Let me see that. And of course, he dumped it out in the sink. So I don't think it was more chlorine than you put in a pool. Maybe it was. But we've lived in places, it comes to mind Champaign-Urbana, where there actually is a generous amount of chlorine in the water, where from time to time, when you take a shower or wash your hands or wash your clothes, you can get a little bit of a hint of a smell of chlorine. Didn't actually bother me that much, and it did have a magical effect where you could launder your clothes at home and forget. We've all done this. You forget to move the clothes from the washing machine to the dryer, and when some places we've lived where if you do that and the clothes sits there wet for a couple of hours, it smells enough that you don't want to dry it. You want to wash it again. Well, in Champaign-Urbana, the chlorine level was high enough, maybe too high, I don't know, that you could leave it sit for 24 hours and then put it in the dryer, and it's never going to smell because whatever was in there, it was wiped out by the chlorine. The house in Florida doesn't have this effect. We can't let clothes sit 12 to 24 hours in the washing machine. I don't occasionally smell chlorine when I get out of the shower. Matter of fact, I don't even really smell chlorine when I get out of the pool, and maybe that's because it's a salt water-based pool, and it's a whole another thing that I haven't really fully understood yet, but it's not direct chlorine, it's sodium chloride from salt that's added to the filtration system. Anywho, our water, our drinking water, I am confident, does not have more chlorine than what's normally recommended for a pool. And of course, I don't think he even looked outside, maybe unless he did before, he got to the front door, but then just drops out, this is the best system, and this is what the neighbors bought, and this is what you really need, and it's going to remove everything from your water. You have only pure, straight up water, nothing in it. And that might sound good, but I happen to know that's bad. That's not a good thing to have. First of all, that's probably not what's going to happen. But if you have absolutely nothing in your water, the water then becomes more corrosive than it generally is. And what you can have as a side effect is that the water picks up chemicals and elements from your plumbing. So you can be removing something that's perfectly harmless, small amounts of chlorine, small amounts of magnesium, maybe moderate amounts of calcium that maybe you don't want in there. But if you take out everything, again, water softeners don't take out everything. They replace it with other stuff and maybe take out some while they're at it. But water with absolutely nothing in it, pure, just straight H2O, is corrosive. And it will leach out lead and copper and silver and whatever's in your plumbing and add it to your drinking water, perhaps in levels that you don't want. So you can actually make your water less safe. Again, I am not an expert in this area. So if I've got this all messed up and you're a water expert, send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com, and maybe we can have you on, talk about how all this stuff really works in water safety and things like that. But it was just one of those things that it felt like that when someone comes into your house and wants to sell you a very expensive vacuum and they have little tricks to make it look more impressive. When we've had friends have people show up to their house and sell them cleaning towels for the kitchen that have copper fiber in it. And they do a certain test that gives a result without the copper fiber and a different result with the copper fiber. Doesn't mean that that's actually what you think it means. And so I guess I maybe knew enough about chemistry to think, well, you're getting a reaction one way and you're not getting a reaction the other way. But I don't know exactly what it is you're doing, and I don't know that what you're telling me is actually the case. What I really thought would happen, and okay, I'll own this for my own stupidity, is that he would come on a first visit, take a water sample, and send it somewhere to a lab maybe that tests it, and then comes back and tells us the things that we need to get rid of the things that shouldn't be in the water. No, there was none of that. It was just a couple of chemistry tricks, which didn't impress me. Maybe I know just enough about chemistry to be dangerous. I don't know. But then starts whipping out the price that he gave his neighbors and the system. Honestly, the system, it'll take care of everything that's wrong with your water. And normally it's $9,000. But because of a special, we could probably put it in for under $6,000. Well, that's a lot of water, or not a lot of water, hopefully a lot of water, a lot of money to put in a system that solves what? What actually is the problem? Is calcium a problem? Is magnesium in my water a problem? Is there something else in the water that has yet to be identified, creating an odor that you're not taking care of? So I just was put off by the whole process. And like I said, within the first 30 seconds to a minute, I kind of had a feeling that there was absolutely no way we were hiring this guy, and it never got better. It only got worse. And I'm absolutely convinced that he doesn't really know about water and water filtration systems. He knows how to put on his show and sell these water purification systems, which might do everything he said and might be good for you, but might actually remove too much stuff from the water. So that was my thought. So I guess now we're going to have to find an independent lab. So if you have any genius ideas of where to get water tested or where to ship water to, and in a container to get tested, let me know. Maybe we'll try some home kits, but I think we'll just go straight to a lab and have them test it and let us know if there's anything in the water that's at a level that's unsafe. And maybe it's just something that's perfectly harmless that's in the water that we're just not used to, and it smells a little funky. I don't know yet, but I'll try to keep you posted as I learn more. Thank you so much for listening and being here. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show so far. Got a couple other random topics, current news I'm just going to throw in here. Recently saw a story from people, I think it's Virginia, where their electric bills, monthly electric bills have gone from $200 to $300 to $700 to $800. And apparently the electric company is run by the city. And so all these people showed up at the city council meeting to protest because they don't have that kind of money to pay an electric bill. And of course, the mayor was trying to make excuses on the fly, which it was bad. It didn't work out. As far as I'm concerned, it was bad answers. But it appears that this electric company is run by the city. And so one of the things the mayor said in the story that I saw, we don't have a plan. We got to bring gas prices down, or natural gas prices down. We don't have a plan. Well, that's pretty straightforward. I think that might have been something that he said that was straightforward and honest. They don't have a plan. They have no idea what they're doing. Often companies like this, utility companies, will not just buy electricity or natural gas or whatever they need as they need it at the spot price, or the current price for the day. They will often have a lot of futures and hedges and options, which, if I've talked about them on the show, I've told you not to play with those, not to be interested. But if you know you're going to buy natural gas, if the world shows some instability, like maybe a war involving one or two of the largest natural gas producers, maybe before everything goes crazy, you go put some money down for some options or hedge against it, and maybe you should do that just on an ongoing basis, because that you can manage your prices, you can manage your costs and the fluctuations. And in this case, the city's management, the electric company management, their apparent incompetence, I don't know the full story, so maybe I'm wrong, but their apparent incompetence has led to residents having $800 electric bills. And these are $800 electric bills for houses that have 2 bedrooms or a 2-bedroom condo. It's pretty brutal. Then one other thing the mayor added in, just to make sure you understood where he's coming from. He says, I will say that I think the current administration attacked the fossil fuel industry from day one. From the context of the article, you can figure out easily he's talking about Biden. And so he doesn't have a plan. They apparently have no idea how costs work for energy supplies, energy sources, materials. And after admitting they don't know what they're doing, they're doubling. No, it's not doubling down. This is a whole new stupid line, shifting the burden to President Biden for messing it all up. So I'm assuming he's a Republican, given the comments on the administration, a.k.a. Biden. And, of course, it popped in the head. I thought Republicans liked free markets. Why doesn't this guy just say, hey, instead of spending money on options and futures to control the price, we believe in the economy. We believe in free markets. And so when prices go up, just use less. And when prices go down, you can use more. And so there's no excuses. There's no reasons. That is our plan. We're just going to buy and pay whatever it costs because we believe in free markets, and you should pay those prices too. Just for fun, skimming some of the news stories I set aside. Apparently, Alex Jones is in another trial where he's being sued by some other parents, and now one of his former attorneys has testified that Alex Jones lied, kept lying, knew he was lying, and found out he could make a whole lot of money by lying, and so just kept doing that because that's how a lot of people think. Totally different random thing. I don't know if I said this at the beginning. I went to Post Malone. Post Malone is a artist, a singer, uses a lot of auto-tune, but he's a singer. He can play a guitar, apparently, because he did that on stage. Really nice show. Not necessarily something that I'm into, but he has become quite well known and has 4 or 5 top 40 hits that I've heard over the last few years. And you know what? He put on a good show. It was very nice and entertaining. So that was kind of cool to actually get out again. I went to the United Center in Chicago to see that. So that's nice. The one other thing, I think, I don't think I have more than this, but I'll check. The Fraternal Order of Police. I think that's like a police club. I don't know exactly what they do, but I got a call from somebody claiming to be a sergeant and calling on behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police. And at first it kind of caught me off guard. And so I asked, is this official police business? Is someone that I know hurt, in danger, or broken a law? And he's like, oh, no, it's nothing like that. Nothing's wrong. And so I said, okay, well, what can I do for you? I for a minute, maybe I thought maybe it had something to do with my brother and him passing away 6 to 8 weeks ago. And he says, no, we're doing a fundraising campaign. And if you can donate a little bit of money, we can and maybe send you a sticker for your car window or a license plate holder. And I said, I'm so sorry. I can't help you. I thank you for your service, and I appreciate that you're there doing your job. But the thing that you're doing right now, I am morally opposed to. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you're basically asking me for money to give to the police or the, what did I call it? The Fraternal Order of Police organization. Assuming this is not even just a straight up scam, but they're asking me for money, and then they're going to send me a sticker for my car or a license plate holder, which means if I get pulled over, it's been a while, but it could happen. If I get pulled over, is there some advantage to you as the driver if you have a sticker or a police license plate holder? Maybe there's not. Maybe there is. Maybe it's only sometimes. And so that's what I'm morally opposed to, because it's kind of like, I'd hate to see you lose your freedoms here. Maybe you could contribute a few dollars to help us out. It's kind of like the shakedown in big cities with mobs, where they said, hey, things have gotten really violent around here, but for a small fee, we can protect your shop for you and make sure nothing happens to it. So I've always hated that. I don't like it. It's maybe they don't even imply that you're going to have any benefit, but it has to go through the mind of the person donating money that, hey, this might help me out. Who knows? And then, of course, after all that, he says, well, can I send you some information in the mail? And I was stunned. I was like, really? This is what you're going to go to? Did you not understand anything that I just told you about what I think you were doing is immoral and unethical? And your response is to tell me that you want to mail me stuff, which, by the way, is wink, wink, we know where you live? Really? So I said something like that back to him, and he goes, no, you don't understand. And then I just hung up. Someone suggested from some of my other strange phone calls recently that maybe I should start recording these things, but who knows? It's absolutely crazy. Oh, I do have one more topic here. Well, maybe two. Mike Lindell, I think it's Mike. Yeah, Mike Lindell, the MyPillow guy, got surrounded by FBI agents in cars at either a Hardee's or an Arby's. I've read two different stories, and they had a search warrant for his phone and took his phone. So hopefully some exciting things. And then one last thing, and I'll really be done. It's been a while since I made a show, so I have things to talk about. In the past, I've talked about promises that Bitcoin makes, or promises that people make on the behalf of Bitcoin, like it's a living entity. And one of them last fall and even into the beginning of 2022 was that it is a uncorrelated asset, which means that it doesn't go up and down like the stock market. Funny thing is, the best, most well-known uncorrelated asset that doesn't go up or down with the stock market, honestly, is cash. Because if the stock market goes up, cash is cash. If the stock market goes down, the cash is still cash. But Bitcoin, allegedly, is a store of value. Not true. It will protect you when the market goes down. Clearly not true. So year to date, at least when I looked this number up a couple days ago, the U.S. stock market, as measured by the total stock market index, is down, give or take, 17%. And Bitcoin year to date is down 56%. So I am not saying that Bitcoin will go down. I am not saying Bitcoin will go up. What I'm telling you is it is more volatile than the stock market. I think its long-term survivability is minimal, and it's definitely not an uncorrelated asset, and it's definitely not going to help you at all. If you're concerned about the market might fall 15, 20, 30%, well, the solution is not investing in something that loses triple. Is that triple? Is that quadruple? And this triple, I think. So you've got that. Okay, enough for now. We're going to wrap up the show. I do appreciate you listening. I will be in Las Vegas in October for CSICon, and then right after that, around Halloween, for the FFRF conference in San Antonio. So if you go to either one of those and you see me, please feel free to come up and say hello. Until then, ciao.